when you plot measures of well-being over time on a graph, good things go up, bad things go down. And not because of any magical process that lifts us ever upward. The laws of the universe don't particularly care about us, but because we're smart and we solve problems.
I'm back in New York City to sit down with a man who needs little introduction, Professor Steven Pinker.
Common knowledge is necessary for people to be on the same page, to make choices that benefit them both as long as they both make the same choice.
Steven is the Johnston Family Professor of Psychology at Harvard University and has penned several bestsellers, including The Blank Slate, Enlightenment Now, and The Better Angels of Our Nature. When you and Rebecca go to dinner parties with other people, do they expect you to talk about this kind of shit?
Sometimes.
But yeah. Tonight, we take a look behind the curtain at the real Steven Pinker and what makes him tick. So you're hungry for Hungarians, is what you are.
Yes, and that's the one way you can
And
put it.
your last meal is an ode to these women.
You devil.
And what would someone like Steven contemplate when the end was near?
If you like it, subscribe, leave a comment.
This is Last Meal, where I prepare the dish my guest would want if it were their last.
Cheers.
Cheers.
And thank you for having me on Last Meal.
It's going to be fun. I want to open up with a question that I think would be particularly interesting for you. If you had to be transported to a different year entirely, everything else remains the same. You can go into the past, you can go into the future, but you can never come back.
Aha. And am I an approximation to me in that world, or am I a randomly selected person on Earth?
You are as you are.
I see. Okay.
You are Steven Pinker.
Okay.
You're Steven Pinker 1966, but at your age?
Yes.
Or you're Steven Pinker 2150.
At my age. Okay.
Yeah,
so it's
everything
not
else, you're literally...
It's not the philosophical thought experiment from John Rawls in which you are incarnated as a randomly selected person in society or in the world. It's not that.
It is not that. Yeah.
But I have actually speculated on that, actually quoting former President Obama, who said, if you had to be born at any time, you didn't know who you were going to be, you'd pick now, which I think remains true now. But that's not what we're talking about. The answer, might be the same. We know more now than we did before. All the art that was produced in the past, we have now, including things that we can watch on demand on YouTube with a smartphone. Scientific knowledge, we haven't forgotten much. The world has challenges, but it always has challenges which seem insurmountable at the time, but very often turn out to be surmountable. If I could visit, if I could just spend a couple of weeks. Maybe New York in the 50s, the heyday of jazz, the dawning of the beat scene in Greenwich Village.
You big beat scene guy?
Big
Jack Kerouac kind of?
I'm not a huge Jack Kerouac fan, but just the whole vibe, the birth of cool.
Okay,
Miles Davis. The last of the great Broadway musicals before New York started its deterioration in the 1960s, when there was a huge increase in crime and vandalism. But anyway, there's something romantic about that era. Perhaps I was born in the 50s, so that adds to it, although not in New York. But that would certainly be one. Maybe California in the 70s. The
Haight-Ashbury type. Sort of
Haight-Ashbury, I was thinking more of Laurel Canyon and all of the folk rock groups, and artists Joni Mitchell and Crosby, Stills and Nash. And
so your selection to go in the past is very much centered around the art of the time.
I guess maybe that's what looms large. But again, these would be for visits, kind of groove on the vibes of the time.
Well, I did stipulated my question, although perhaps you missed it. There's an option to go in the future.
The future, yes.
Would you take that?
With any luck, I'll make it to 2035. So let's say, so that'd be kind of boring because I hope I'll be there in 35. Let's say 2050. Yeah.
2050. That's quite conservative.
Yeah.
Wow. Interesting. Why wouldn't you say something like 2200?
Too much uncertainty. There could be. I can't envision what that will be, just as 125 years ago, I don't think anyone could envision what life today would be like.
Yeah.
I think most visions of the future, vast majority of them are dystopian.
Were they always, historically?
I think most were. So, 1984, Brave New World, that H.G. Wells story, famous
War of
story.
the Worlds?
The Time Machine.
The Time Machine.
The Time Machine, yes, of course. Now, one exception, perhaps, was Star Trek, where there was some optimism in their view of the to explore strange new worlds, to go where no man has gone before. In the
You're a bit of a Trekkie, aren't you?
a little bit. The original one.
I've noticed you mention
Occasionally, yeah. The original one. I haven't kept up with all of the subsequent incarnations.
Yeah.
But in general, visions of the future tend to be dystopian.
They do, yes. But I mean, and you've been such a proponent in your life about how humanity is getting better over time.
Well, so far it has been.
Yeah.
Not as a matter of optimism, as just seeing the glass as half full, looking at the bright side. Maybe I do that, but that has nothing to do with what's actually happened in the world. That's just my temperament. But when you plot measures of well-being over time on a graph, the good things go up, bad things go down, not in a straight line, and there are reversals, and we're living through a couple of them now, although other measures of progress are continuing to improve. And not because of any magical process that lifts us ever upward. The laws of the universe don't particularly care about us. If anything, things get worse because of entropy, disorder, forces of evolution we're not engineered to make us happy, but because we're smart and we solve problems. And if we keep the things that work, and if we learn from our mistakes and try not to repeat them, and we accumulate the good discoveries, then things can gradually, incrementally get better. And in most ways they have.
Yeah. I agree.
But I guess I'm also humble about projecting into the future, perhaps mindful of one study that I report in one of my books on so-called super forecasters. There are people who hone their ability to forecast the future, not with necromancy or entrails, but just by looking at data sets, looking at the base rate, looking at the odds, costing out the various possibilities in terms of how probable they are, and they're better than the average pundit, who's pretty close at chance. If you actually get them on record to make a prediction, which you can then verify in the future as to whether it came true or not, and the best super forecasters, the ones who are really, really good at it, their accuracy falls to chance levels about 5 years out. Now, they're the best in the world. Yes. So life is really unpredictable.
That's who would you say would be these super predictors?
Well, there's a psychologist named Philip Tetlock who has who coined the term super forecaster and has a project to cultivate them, track their performance, get them to learn from each other.
Okay. I remember reading a book many, many years ago called The Next 100 Years by a guy called George. Oh, God, I forget his name now. But I remember thinking when I was reading the book, there were just so many predictions in it. Mexico's going to become a superpower, all this sort of stuff.
Oh, yes.
And I remember thinking to myself, if none of this happens, he's not going to be around. He's not culpable for this.
So that's the point of the super forecaster project, which is to get them on the record, and then follow up in 6 months, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years to see how well they did. Because you're right, if you're a daily pundit or a prognosticator, you sell your books and then people forget about it. They might remember the predictions that turn out to be true and forget all the ones that turn out to be false. That's how psychics make a living.
Totally. Like cold reading and... You focus on the hits, not the misses.
Exactly. And if you spray out enough predictions, by chance, some of them are going to turn out to be true.
That's right. Yeah.
Anyway, all this is humility over what to expect in the next 100 years.
Yeah. And I like your way of thinking about it. It's kind of like the way I would think about an index fund or something like that. It grows over time, but there are dips. There are valleys and troughs.
Exactly right. And it's even misleading to call it cyclical, because if there was a predictable cycle, then kind of investors would kind of arbitrage the difference between what's now and what's expected.
Yeah.
But it's not that predictable. They're random shocks. No one expects the Spanish Inquisition,
Yeah.
and no one
You know,
expects
yeah.
9/11, and
Black swan events, as
yeah,
Nassim
and
Taleb would call it. Yeah.
even ChatGPT coming out 2 years ago. I follow artificial intelligence reasonably closely, but the leap in performance in ChatGPT, it took most people by surprise.
Mm.
Catastrophes like 10/7 in southern Israel, 9/11. Um, they really stuff happens,
Yeah.
and the consequences of the stuff aren't predictable either, such as the invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan. That wasn't foreordained.
Yeah.
And there are a number of reasons. Some of them, they're weather disasters that come just because weather is chaotic. But then there's, the human brain probably has some chaos in it, and people make decisions that have cascading implications.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, there are things about modernity that annoy me. Bureaucracies, monopolies, pharmacies. But I mean, I think at the end of the day, uh, I'm one of those people that is constantly blown away by what is available to me, whether it be, as you were saying, ChatGPT, or I'm a huge, I'm a massive juggernaut for self-driving cars.
Oh,
Actually
yes.
raving about this to people, and they think I'm an absolute lunatic.
Have you
But it's
tried one?
Oh yeah, I go in them all the time when I'm in Austin.
Yeah.
I have Waymos. I've signed up for the robo-taxi thing, but I'm a huge proponent of modernity in these respects. And I find myself having those conversations with people where I'm trying to convince them, like, you live in the best time in the world. It's crazy to think none of this was available to us just 5 years ago or
Yeah.
10 years ago or something like that. So what do you think it is about, do we have a propensity to always want to believe that everything's worse than it is? Or do you think that there are external forces that are incentivized to make things feel worse to sell headlines or products or whatever it is?
There's probably some of that. There is a negativity bias in journalists. One journalist told me, "Bad news is journalism, good news is advertising."
Yeah.
And there's a fear of being like the Soviet apparatchiks who would release reports on our 5-year plan to increase production of pig iron is being successful, and they don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So they think that speaking truth to power means exposing the scandals and the corruption. So there's that mindset, which means that your news feed is going to be skewed toward the negative, confirmed by studies that actually give editors a choice between two different framings of the same event, one of them more optimistic, one more pessimistic, and they pick the pessimistic one. But I think even if that bias didn't exist, the nature of news is negative because it reports events. And it's much easier for something to go wrong in quickly than for it to go right quickly. And so anything that happened yesterday, discreetly enough for it to be a news item, is bound to be bad, almost always. A terrorist attack, a shooting, a war, a depression, a pandemic breaking out. Whereas things that are good are either things that don't happen, and so they don't make the news. Like when I was growing up and the obsession was the war in Vietnam, if someone were to say, for almost 50 years there will be, or 40 years, there'll be no war in Southeast Asia. It will be a war-free zone. I'll say, you're dreaming, you're romantic, you're Panglossian. That has happened. But it isn't a news item. No war in Southeast Asia, again today.
Yes.
Other things that are good creep up a few percentage points a year and can even compound, uh, like the decline in extreme poverty, like the increase in longevity. But there's never a Thursday morning in October in which they all of a sudden happen, and so you don't read about them.
Yeah.
So the improvements are indiscernible. The disasters are obvious, and as everyone on Earth with a smartphone becomes a video journalist, we hear more and more about the things that go wrong, and there, plenty of things that can and do go wrong. So we tend to think that the world is falling apart, and we always have thought that. There's also some incentives from if you're an incumbent, if you're the current mayor or president, you want to highlight how everything is going well. If you're a challenger, if you're a moralist, if you're a social critic, then you want to point out everything that's going wrong. And no one, and people do seem more moral. They seem like prophets when they warn of doom, including the biblical prophets, of course.
Yeah.
Um,
Charismatic as well, if
it
they're
it, it
also,
helps.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
it's hard to be charismatic by saying, life expectancy is longer than it has ever been. You sound like like Dr. Pangloss from the Voltaire play.
Yeah.
So I think where our perception is biased. Also, I think as if you kind of think, what was the state of life for the entire span in which we evolved? In fact, until very recently, there was no progress. There was an awful lot of stasis. A lot of things could go wrong, like diseases and famines and so on. But the accumulation of the fruits of technology, better crops and crop rotation and transportation networks and refrigeration and computers and so on. I mean, all of that only began about 250 years ago. And so it's certainly not something that we're wired to expect or process or comprehend even. It happens, we kind of pocket the gains. We don't realize how miraculous modern life is. As one comedian put it, people complain about a flight being, 40 minutes late or them, running out of peanuts. But he said, if you're sitting in a chair in the sky, you're a Greek
Yeah.
god.
Yeah. I think
And
that
we
was
don't
Louis
think about
C.K.
it.
Yeah,
It was
that's
Louis
a
C.K.,
great,
yes.
yeah, yeah.
I guess you can mention him again, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
I'll be mentioning it for years.
Yeah.
He also has another bit that always stuck with me, which was about when Wi-Fi was introduced onto the plane.
Yes.
And then, that wasn't working for a second, and the guy was like, "Fuck," I'm like,
Yeah, this is bullshit.
like, how are you complaining about something you only just knew you had 5 minutes ago?
Yes, right.
But that's such a great analogy for, I guess, how we are these days. Like we just come to expect particular levels of comfort, modern conveniences, and technologies the minute that they arrive.
Yes, exactly. I mean, there's a sense in which life never does get better because
Yeah, it's
we
relative. Yeah,
keep raising our sights
that's
and,
right.
and
Yeah, yeah.
pocketing our gains. Now, of course, it really does get better. If your child doesn't die before the age of 5, that's uncontestably better than if your child does die.
Yeah.
Now, we don't stop and think about it. But it's very unlikely that our child will die. Unlike just 300 or 400 years ago, where probably a third to half of children died before their 15th birthday. We don't think about it, and the fact that
Doctors should just tell parents that, if they had a
Yes.
bad time, and they'll, you'd be dead if it was 100 years ago.
Yes,
Chin up.
I mean, we probably could use some of that.
Yeah.
It sounds kind of
Maybe not as on the nose as that. But
yeah, right. It sounds clueless to say it, even though
Yeah.
it's true.
A lot of the progresses, I guess, that we do make over time, as you point out in all of your bodies of work, come from Enlightenment values. And I was thinking a lot about Enlightenment values recently. As a speaker, I talk a lot about anti-fragility,
Mhm.
right? Which is the idea that challenges in life can actually be re-engineered to make you stronger, rather than, it's not resilience in a way. You know what I mean? It's like
Mhm.
using negative aspects of your life or challenges as the raw materials for strength moving forward. And I thought to myself, like, to an extent, I see Enlightenment values as anti-fragile tools of humanity. Would you
Mhm.
agree with that?
Yes, yes. I mean, that is, it's not a master plan from which you can deduce everything from first principles, a doctrine, but it's a desire to learn, to experiment, to learn from your mistakes, to try to understand, to seek the truth, knowing that you yourself will never know when you have it because you're fallible, you're not omniscient, but to be guided by the ideal of making things better, understanding the world better. And so
Yeah.
the scientific method, I mean, not that there's any one thing called the scientific method, but just the whole scientific mindset of you advance hypotheses in a way that they could be falsified or could be strengthened. You go out into the world and you let the world tell you whether your ideas are true or false. Now, of course, it's very hard for people to do that in practice because you get married to your ideas,
Yeah.
but the science should be set up that if you're married to an idea that turns out to be wrong, it's just too bad. It's going to feel bad for you, but for all of us put together, we're better off when we know what's true and what's false.
So you want a system by which society self-corrects in that way.
Exactly. And that was also a big theme in the work of Karl Popper, the philosopher of science and of democracy, who called for society to be an open society, to be open to innovations, and of course prepared not to adopt any crack-brained idea that someone proposes, but see if it works or not.
Yeah. When you and Rebecca go to dinner parties
Yes.
with other people, do they expect you to talk about this kind of shit?
Sometimes.
But yeah,
sometimes.
Are you allowed to just go there and chat about like how was your day kind of thing? Or,
oh yeah, there's a lot of discussion of what's the best fish market? Do you like Cape Tip? No, Max is much better. And so there's an awful lot of
there's a bit of that still.
Pleasingly mundane and trivial conversational topics.
That must be some form of respite.
Have you seen this streaming series? No. I watched one episode and
yeah. Right. Okay, good. Yeah. I'm glad. I'm happy for you. Speaking of dinner parties, let's get on to your last meal.
Yes.
Stephen Pinky, your last meal is chicken paprikash.
Ooh, looks great. Oh, with dumplings. Are these shlishkas?
They are nokedli.
Oh, nokedli. Okay, they're the micro shlishkas.
Okay. What did you call the dumplings? It was
shlishka.
Shlishka.
I learned this from my my wife Rebecca Goldstein, who is a quarter Hungarian. Chicken paprikash being a signature Hungarian dish,
yes,
which is not only delicious, composed of, well, you'll tell us, I guess, but paprika, hence paprikash. Rebecca herself has a masterful chicken paprikash that she cooks from her Hungarian side. But growing up in Montreal, I was born in 1954. In 1956, there was the Hungarian Revolution. The Soviets invaded, and there were some refugees from Hungary, many of whom settled in Montreal. It was, I think it was harder to get into the United States than into Canada, and Canada's a pretty nice place anyway.
Yeah.
My grandparents came to Canada in the 1920s from Eastern Europe, probably also because the U.S. wouldn't let them in.
Right.
So the sort of second best choice, you couldn't get into New York. What was your next choice? Well, look at a map. Oh, okay. Well, this city called Montreal, it's as close as you can get to New York without being in New York.
And what happens if you don't get in there? They send you to Australia?
Well, at that time, for Eastern European Jews, it could have been South Africa, could have been Argentina, could have been Palestine, could have been Australia. Australia wouldn't be so bad for another Commonwealth country.
Yeah.
But I posthumously thank my grandparents for ending up in Canada rather than, say, Argentina or South Africa or then Palestine.
Yeah.
Canada's a pretty nice place. It's congenial to immigrants. It's liberal. It's democratic. It's affluent. It's tolerant. It's a pleasant place to grow up. Anyway, so and welcomed in a number of Hungarian refugees in 1956. Including a bunch of people I went to school with. There were 3 girls in particular, Judy, Dorothy, and Kathy. Their mothers all knew each other. They all knew each other. One of them was my first crush. Another one was my first girlfriend. So I've always had, and then Rebecca being part Hungarian.
Right. So you're hungry for Hungarians is what you are.
Yes. And that's the one way you can put it.
Your last meal is an ode to these women.
Yes. And also when I was in university, I went to McGill University in Montreal. I lived with my parents, which is Canadian style. Most Americans go off and live in dorms.
Yes, we do the same in Australia.
Students live with their parents.
Yes,
and I commuted in. But the great thing is McGill was plunk in the middle of downtown Montreal, which is a great cosmopolitan city. And so downtown was my campus. And being a student, you can't afford to eat out to really nice restaurants, but there were a fair number of affordable Hungarian restaurants at the time. At a time, food fads come and go. Sometimes it's Greek food and Thai food, but there were a number of Hungarian restaurants. I think that somehow that food trend has died. They're very hard to find a Hungarian restaurant, but that's where we would go and often get a very affordable chicken paprikash.
Yeah.
And then
goulash.
And goulash for sure. And course, an array of scrumptious pastry for dessert.
Oh, yes. So we went to, I'll be completely transparent with you. I did not make the nokedli.
Okay.
But I wanted to find somewhere that would approximate what I thought you wanted. And so I searched here in New York for a Hungarian restaurant. The only one that I found was on the Upper East Side.
There aren't that many of them. They've
Yeah.
gone. I don't know. They've just gone out of style.
Yeah.
I mean, it's heavy food.
It is.
It's-
This is what I had tried the sauce before. It's rich.
Yes.
Do you want to try it?
I thought you'd never ask.
Here's what we're going to do. Is
What are we going to do?
You're the only one with a knife.
Yes.
So you're going to cut me a piece of chicken.
Yes.
And throw it over to this plate.
Okay.
Because you'll make less mess than I presume.
And cut it into pieces?
It's bone in, skin on, which was the
okay.
recommendation. So if you can cut it into
Yes.
half or thirds or something like that.
Okay. And yes, and the dumplings, so they are, I assume these are potato-based?
Flour,
Yeah.
apparently. Oh, thank you.
So I guess many cuisines have various kinds of dumplings.
Yes.
But this is in the family of gnocchi and spätzle, maybe. I guess
Spätzle.
I don't know if
that's what I was going to go with. Because,
Okay.
I mean, this is Williamsburg, so I was going to go with
Oh,
it
yes,
like
okay.
this, where I could get it. But I thought this might be slightly more authentic.
I never heard the term schlichke except from Rebecca.
Right.
It's but they are she makes them. These are larger, but we'll call these micro schlichkes.
Yeah, right. Online, I saw a lot of different variations of it.
Okay, but
some were big, some were small.
And may I partake? Bon appetit?
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
Okay.
Go right ahead. Now, if it's better than Rebecca's, you don't have to say anything.
Oh my God!
Just tell me after.
Oh, you devil! I will simply say, it's like, you can't ask someone like, which of your children do you love more? So, but I will say that this is absolutely scrumptious, and it makes me want to know what did go into the sauce?
What was the process? Okay, so
Yes.
we sauteed onions, and I went really fine with the onions, and also
just plain, ordinary yellow onions,
like the large sweet onions.
Mm-hmm.
Which, by the way, the onions in America are massive.
Yes. Just like everything in America.
They're like 3 times the size of onions in Australia.
Is that right?
Really, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
So we did half of that. We did half of, I guess, what you call a bell pepper. We call it capsicum.
I know that. I was yes, I spent a fair amount of time in New Zealand.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So I've learned terms like capsicum,
yeah.
ladyfingers.
Yes.
And aubergine.
Yeah. So sauteed those in chicken fat. The chicken fat was rendered from these pieces of chicken.
Chicken fat, of course.
Yeah.
That's why it's so delicious.
Yes. Oh, well, I should actually start with the fact that we always make our own stock.
Yes, okay.
Usually when we go to a place, we're going to be there for more than a couple of weeks. We'll make our own stock. In this instance, we made chicken stock because we knew we were making this. So that's the typical, you get a whole bunch of wings and drumsticks and roast them down with mirepoix and all that sort of stuff, reduce the stock. So we had the stock on the side. Then we seared the chicken to render some of the fat out. Then we added the onions. Then we added the capsicum or bell peppers.
Yes.
A lot of people say they add the paprika at that point, but I always find that paprika burns if you don't have it in a little bit of liquid.
Okay.
So we sort of withheld and put tomato paste.
Okay.
Cook that out for a little bit and then add the stock. And then once the stock is in, you add the garlic and the paprika. The paprika we ordered specifically a particular brand that I've never had before, but there was a YouTube channel that said it was the best that you could get, this Hungarian one.
And do you cook with paprika often?
Yes, I do at home, but mainly in things like Indian cooking and stuff like that. I don't cook many Hungarian dishes. And so I have very particular types that I get at home, but here they said for sweet Hungarian, you had to get this particular brand, which we got. So we got that and a little bit of smoked paprika, but not. So you do a blend.
I do taste the smoke, yes.
Yeah. So you add that, and then what you do is you have to add sour cream, and that's what is the thickening agent of this.
Thickening and enriching.
Yeah,
yes.
and you got to be careful that it doesn't split. And so what you do is you take the sauce, you take a bit of the sauce, and you put it into the sour cream to temper it.
Yep.
So you bring the sour cream up to temperature, and then you add it back into the sauce so it becomes homogenous.
See, this was what differentiates kind of chefs from amateurs. That's the part that I could never get.
As in, I did the good one, or I did the chef one, not the amateur one.
Yes,
Because I'm not a chef.
but as an amateur, where the sour cream, the yogurt, the cream, when I do it, it always separates.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm lacking the finesse that you just described.
Yeah, the tempering.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
Well, it's not that difficult to do. Just I think some people say that if you leave the sour cream out for long enough, it can temper itself. But I did temper it. What's if this was actually your last meal and you got to pick the context, as in who you shared the meal with, where it was, the setting, have you thought about what that might be?
Well, who I shared with was clearly Rebecca. So where would it be? Oh, let's see. I think somewhere with a suitably spectacular view. This just popped into mind. had not given this question enough thought beforehand, but the top of the CN Tower in Toronto is something that I always...
Is that the famous shaped one?
It's
the one you always see on...
So it is the signature of the Toronto skyline. And so it is this massive tapering tower with a revolving restaurant on top.
Okay.
And so when I speak in Toronto and people say, where would you like to go for dinner? I specify that, even though Torontonians sometimes groan because it's not the best food in Toronto.
Sure.
But it is a spectacular view of Lake Ontario, and it's the highest restaurant that I've ever been in.
Yeah. And I mean, it doesn't really matter about the food, because if you're getting as your last meal the chicken paprikash,
we already know that it's a good food.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Meal. That's the first thing that came to mind.
That's a good way to go out.
Oh, but actually, so my last meal, actually, I might pick the deck of our house on Cape Cod, which has an ocean view. It has a sunset view, and it's not as exotic, but it would be... Actually, that would be a fitting end, because it would be that which I already appreciate in life, not being kind of greedy or looking for something new experience just because it's new, but something that I always appreciated, and that would be a way to go out.
How often do you get up there these days?
We move out for the summer. Often spend several weeks in the winter, and whenever we can. Weekends when we can get away.
How far away is it?
It's about a little more than 100 miles from where we live in Boston.
Oh, okay. That's pretty close, actually.
Yeah.
You just drive that. Yeah, right.
Sometimes we drive, sometimes we take a ferry. The ferry is actually closer shorter as the crow flies, because Cape Cod is a hook, and so from Boston you can go to the tip close to where we live, which is shorter than driving the circumference.
Right. Okay. Hence the sunset view as well, right?
And hence the sunset view, because it's facing west.
It's facing west. If you were to take the reverse perception right now, focusing on the beginning of life rather than the end, can you remember your first ever memory?
So first memories, I actually looked into this as a cognitive psychologist.
Cool.
So first memories tend to be isolated, highly sensory. You remember typically starting around 2, you might have just one vignette here or there from the point of view of your 2-year-old vantage point, usually how something feels, how something looks. And I do remember wearing pale blue, we used to call them Dr. Dentons. These are pajamas with built-in feet and little blue rubber dots on the soles. And I remember kind of looking down and wearing the pale blue pajamas with the blue dots on, and I remember where I was in the house that we lived in at the time. So that's an isolated memory.
Yeah.
Then there are the kind of continuous autobiographical memory, where you have a kind of a running narrative of your life and the age at which, if your parents said, oh, we moved and we lived in a certain house, you would remember it. Whereas that starts typically around 4. Prior to that, if your parents said, well, when we were 3, we moved, you have no memory of the house. You'd say, okay, I have no memory of the house. starting around after 4, then it's a continuous narrative.
And what was your, would you say, can you remember a first memory of awe at something? Something that that made you
awesome in the original sense of awesome.
Yes, yeah.
I think being out on a rowboat on a lake in which we spent some summers and a starry night far enough away from the city that there was a black sky spangled with stars.
Yeah.
Um,
The universe can really do that to you at
the
any
universe
age.
can do
can't
it.
it? Yeah.
It can. Although I'm surprised, retrospectively, that I never noticed the Milky Way until I was a young adult. I don't even think I knew when I was seeing planets. In fact, when I was a child, I just assumed planets were something that you could only see through a telescope. I didn't realize that Venus and Mars and Jupiter were visible with the naked eye. And so there was, or the Milky Way. Somehow, I don't know how I missed that. No one pointed it out to me.
I think I had the opposite problem when I was 5. I looked up and I was like, oh, look how many planets I can see. I was like, none of them are fucking planets. I read an article that you were featured in where you mentioned being around for the Murray Hill riots in Montreal.
Yes. I mean, I remember reading about them, yes.
Yeah, right. Okay.
I didn't see them firsthand.
Yeah, and that had some kind of an effect on you in a way that you could see academic realism coming to life or something?
Yeah, some effect in that when I was a young teenager, I had a friend who had an older brother who was active in 1960s radicalism. I was a little bit too young for the heyday of that, but it trickled down. And he was a fan of the classic anarchists, Kropotkin and Bakunin. And the idea was that it's the police that actually cause crime, that forcing us to decide this is my property, this is your property. Before that, there was communal sharing, kind of universal abundance. And an idea goes back to Rousseau. It sounded plausible enough at the time, and it was very systematic. So it was, I had an answer for everything. I remember around the dinner table trying to tell my parents about this, why this anarchism was just this great idea that I'd just been introduced to. And they said, oh, come on, what do you think would happen if police were just stayed home? There'd be violent chaos. And sure enough, in one day in Montreal, the police went on strike. This is very Quebecois. Every public service sector periodically goes on strike. Sometimes it's the nurses, sometimes it's the letter carriers, firefighters. Anyway, this time was the police. And what do you know? Within hours, there was looting. There was a labor dispute ended up with widespread rioting. A doctor shot a burglar who was trying to get into an armed burglar who was trying to get into his home, and until the mayor finally called in the Mounties, the federal police force, to restore order. So, long-suffering mom and dad were right, and their know-it-all son was wrong. And, it's not the case that anywhere at any time when police walk off the job, chaos emerges within hours. By the way, the reason that it was poignant in Montreal is that we were proud of how we're much less violent than our neighbors to the south, the United States, during the 1960s, when crime shot up in the United States, and there were regular riots and urban decay. Canada, we Canadians are not like that.
Yeah.
Well, it turns out we could be.
Yeah, you
as an adult, I've mentioned that anecdote in my book, The Better Angels of Our Nature, on the decline of violence, in arguing that one of the reasons for the historical decline of violence has been more effective criminal justice system and police. And that generally, most regions of the world that live in a state of anarchy do have high rates of violence when you actually count the bodies. And so I actually looked to see whether the Montreal police strike was unique, and whether, in general, what happens when there are police strikes, which happens every once in a while. Not such an easy question to answer, because often if the municipal police go on strike, they bring in the state police.
Right.
And sometimes there's, instead of going on strike, there's kind of work slowdowns, what they call the blue flu, after the color of the uniforms. But as best I could tell, just using Wikipedia and getting a data set of about 25 police strikes, about half of them, the crime seemed to go up.
Yeah.
So it does seem to be a phenomenon.
Yeah.
And it's one of the reasons why I'm not an anarchist, and I do credit law enforcement with the decline of violence. You wouldn't think that it would be such a controversial position, but there are still romantic factions of the left that are anarchists. There's also of the right, they're anarcho-capitalists. But recently given another shot in the arm with after the killing of George Floyd, there was the move to defund the police or even abolish the police. One of the more harebrained ideas that came out of the American left, and possibly responsible for the defeat of the Democratic candidate in 2024, Kamala Harris, who, even though she walked back from it, made sympathetic noises to defunding the police in the heyday of that slogan.
Not so much here in Manhattan.
Well, actually, in Manhattan, the moment that we are speaking, with the municipal election days away, man very likely to win the election, Zoran Mamdani, did embrace the slogan, defund the police.
That's what I mean.
Yes.
Yeah, like that's not losing him any, as it did Kamala, is my point.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
However, yeah.
But yeah, it's always, I mean, I think the person who put, the sharpest point on his pencil, I guess, recently was Rob Henderson, who mentioned that it's kind of a luxury belief. So the person who actually wants to defund the police is the person who's less affected or least affected by no police in their community because they're wealthy enough to not need them.
Indeed. Yeah. That's absolutely right. And defund the police is not particularly popular in high crime neighborhoods. And shall we split this piece here? Shall I?
I'll have one more tiny. I want you to have it. It's for you.
It's my last meal.
It's your last meal.
Yeah, but I'm a generous person.
Yeah, we're going to kill you.
Okay.
And I did overbuy chicken, so I have more in the fridge to make myself more of this, which I think I'm going to do. Okay. I don't usually do that with last meals when I cook them.
I was going to say, do you approve of this choice?
100%. Yeah,
very good. Okay.
It would be one of my favorites that I've made for anyone, actually.
Oh, well, I'm glad to hear that.
Partially,
and that's high praise.
Thank you. Yeah, partially because it's new.
Some more?
That's plenty. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, partially because it's something that I haven't had before.
Well, because Hungarian restaurants went out of style.
Yeah, I didn't even know it existed, to be honest. But
and dumplings?
No, I'm fine, thanks.
Okay.
But yeah, also because it just tastes so damn good.
Yes,
I love it. It's very rich.
Well, thanks to the sour cream, and also the rendered chicken fat. Yes,
that's right. Yeah, and also when you make chicken stock properly, you get you render out the what do you call it? The collagen in the bones.
Oh,
which converts to gelatin if you cook it really well.
Ah, yes.
So that extra luxurious. And I like a lot of French cooking. It's very rich like that. So I'm definitely a front runner. I recently released a video on the 3 weirdest last meal requests that I got.
Oh, and can you share them with me?
Of course, yeah. So number 3 I gave to Taryn Southern, who picked Kraft mac and cheese.
Who is this?
Taryn Southern.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
She picked Kraft mac and cheese. Number 2.
I think highly overrated even as a nostalgia food. Especially if you use that powdered cheese in the foil pouch.
That's what it's all about, the powdered cheese.
Although if you melt American slices, as mediocre as that is as cheese, it's
never tried that.
Better than the orange powder in the foil pouch.
I'll give that a go. The second prize went to Nick Gillespie because he picked a bunch of Quest bars. You know what this is? Quest bars. They're like these. No. They're like these ketogenic food substances.
Oh, geez, no.
You can buy them.
Where's the fun in that?
There's no fun. He was trying to illustrate the point that he loves things that are man-made, and not necessarily things that are natural. And you can eat as many of these things as you want and not get fat. And he's been on a low-carb diet for a long time.
Oh, okay.
And then the number 1 went to Ayla, who you may or may not know.
Oh, Ayla, yes. Yeah. Oh, yes. Oh, that must have been fun, yeah. And what was her choice?
It was string cheese.
String cheese. Okay.
Yeah, just a
Is this a
plate of string cheese.
childhood memory?
No, it was because a lot of food that she eats is associated with digestive pain, but it's one of the
So this
things that
is
she can't eat.
Pavlovian conditioning.
Yeah, I think so. But my favorite response so far has been Dan Ariely,
Okay.
who got an honorable mention from me because he picked alligator.
Oh, okay. Did he have a reason?
Yes, his reason was he wanted to try something new as the last thing he did on Earth.
Oh, now that is neophilia that would exceed mine. I would just be thinking, yeah, but what if you don't like it? What a waste!
Yeah.
What a waste! And then you're dead.
Exactly.
Yeah. Better to go out with one last splurge of pleasure, I'd say.
But I have to respect it. I mean, he's an advocate for gambling in life and trying new things.
Mm-hmm.
And to take that as your last meal,
That's a gamble.
to try one last thing. Can we talk a bit about common knowledge versus private knowledge? I know you're probably sick of talking about this.
No, not at all.
Because
Are you kidding?
this is the new book.
I'm not definitely not sick.
Okay. Talk me through the difference between common knowledge and private knowledge.
Yes. So, and it does need a bit of an explanation because academics have co-opted the term common knowledge, which is familiar from everyday conversation, and given it a special technical sense. So common knowledge, in the way we use it in conversation, refers to something that's widely known, conventional wisdom. It's sometimes even widely known but not publicly acknowledged. Like it's common knowledge around here that you can bribe the police. That's almost the opposite of its technical meaning, which is something that is not just known, but known to be known. And that is known to be known, etc. ad infinitum. So I know something, you know it, I know that you know it, you know that I know it, I know that you know that I know that you know it, ad infinitum. That's common knowledge. Now, is that some sort of exotic logical thought experiment? It turns out no, because common knowledge is necessary for coordination, for people to be on the same page, to make choices that benefit them both as long as they both make the same choice. So driving on the left versus driving on the right, neither one of them is advantageous compared to the other, but it's really, really good if everyone makes the same choice, and whichever one it is. And they can't just know that you drive on the right, they have to know that everyone else knows. And so even and everyone does know that, and everyone knows that everyone knows that when you get in a car. On a sidewalk or in a corridor, sometimes people can't assume that other people are abiding by a convention, and so you do get chaos and people wandering all over the place. Unless, say, in a sidewalk, that's also used as a bike path, they paint a striped line, and then everyone can see that, and everyone knows that everyone else can see that, and then it's usually much more orderly. But the general point is that things that where you have large scale or coordination require everyone to know that everyone knows something, and that might seem impossible because when you start to think through the layers of I know that she knows that I know that she knows, your head starts to spin. How could that be?
Especially at a population level.
Yes. So right. So how could that be? But common knowledge can be generated in one fell swoop if an event is public, self-evident, conspicuous, out there. That is, if I can see something happening and see you seeing it happening, and you can see me seeing it happening, then we instantly get common knowledge with all its implications of nested beliefs inside beliefs inside beliefs without having to think it through. We just get a sense it's out there. You can't take it back. And that is necessary for a lot of our financial coordination, starting with money itself. What makes a dollar bill valuable? It's not that it's made of any valuable stuff. It's just paper. But I just know that you'll treat it as having value because you know that other people treat it as value because they know that other people will treat it as having value.
Yeah, it's agreed upon generally.
Although that common knowledge can sometimes disappear in cases of hyperinflation, where the money becomes worthless because everyone just assumes that it's worthless.
Yeah.
And in bank runs where people hear a rumor that the bank might be in trouble, so they withdraw their money out of fear that everyone else is withdrawing it, out of fear that everyone else is withdrawing it. That can bring down the whole economy,
Yeah.
which is why Franklin Roosevelt said in the depths of the Depression, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Mhm.
This is literally a
Yeah.
statement of common knowledge. But there are many, many examples where it figures into both financial life, like bubbles where people buy something because they think other people will want to buy it because they think that other people will want to buy it. Um, in politics, political power depends on common knowledge. Well, power in general. I mean, there are brawls where one person beats up the other to establish that they're powerful, and that happens occasionally. But more often, the weaker person defers to the stronger because they know the stronger will hold his ground, and the stronger holds his ground because he knows that the weaker will defer. The
Mm.
hierarchy, the pecking order, the alpha male exists because of mutual or common expectations. And that works at the level of an entire government. If no government has the firepower to intimidate every last one of its citizens, and I like to quote a line from the movie about Gandhi, called Gandhi, where the character says to a British colonial officer, "In the end, you will leave because 100,000 Englishmen simply cannot control 350 million Indians if the Indians refuse to cooperate."
Mm.
So that's a basic fact. Now, the reason that regimes, not just the British in India, but governments anywhere, can hold on to power despite the fact that the whole population acting together could overwhelm them is that, especially in a dictatorship, if people are punished for criticizing the regime, then there's no common knowledge. Every individual might hate the regime, but be in doubt as to whether maybe everyone else is happy. Maybe
Yeah.
I'm just a malcontent. Now, everyone could think that, even while every last one of them hates the regime, but they can't act because the one person standing up can get picked off by the government. What's required to have collective power is common knowledge, everyone knowing that everyone else knows. And so you can get that through a public manifesto, which is why dictatorships don't allow freedom of speech or freedom of the press. You might think, why do they care so much? Let people bitch and moan all they want. They got the guns.
Mm.
But dictatorships realize they don't have enough guns.
Yeah.
And if the discontent becomes common knowledge, they can be overpowered. Or a public demonstration. Everyone shows up in a public square, everyone sees everyone else. That common knowledge can allow them to affect regime change. So there's a joke from the Soviet Union that I quote, which illustrates the idea. In the Soviet Union, there's a man handing out leaflets in Red Square. Of course, the KGB arrests him, take him back to headquarters, and only to discover that the leaflets are blank sheets of paper. They say, "What is the meaning of this?" He says, "What's there to say? It's so obvious." The point is, he was generating common knowledge,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
was subversive,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
is why even in the joke they arrest them. And I
Yeah.
note that life has imitated that joke, that
Mm.
people in
Really?
contemporary Russia have been arrested for holding blank signs.
For the same reason they're doing
Same
it?
reason, yeah.
Yeah?
Even a blank sign can be subversive. Doesn't
Yeah.
have to say anything. It's just if people egg on the guy carrying the blank sign, and everyone sees him, he's generating common knowledge that
Yeah,
they
that's
are
right.
discontent with the
So,
regime.
yeah, as a dictatorship, you need to make sure that the landscape does not permit the child who points out the emperor has no clothes.
Well, exactly. And The Emperor's New Clothes, with which I begin the book, is a story about common knowledge. Because when the little boy said the emperor was naked, he wasn't telling them anything they didn't already know.
Yeah.
But he changed the state of their knowledge
Mm.
because by blurting it out within earshot of everyone, now everyone knew that everyone else knew that everyone else knew.
Yes.
And here's the punchline that I haven't spoken about yet, which is it changed their social relationship with the emperor. They started to ridicule the emperor, whereas previously they deferred to him obsequiously. And so our social relationships, who respects who is intimate with whom in a close friendship or a romance, who is in a transactional relationship with whom, all of these depend on common knowledge. Their coordination problems like driving on the right versus driving on the left. You're best off if both of you do it the same way, and they can be threatened by common knowledge.
Mm. So to sort of play with the metaphor a little bit, I was listening to it, interestingly, completely parenthetically to this clip from Rory Sutherland the other day, who was saying that it's interesting watching airports because it's the one place that groups of people converge whereby they drive on the left or drive on the right. And
Oh,
typically people walk in the same unison that they drive. So if you walk down the street here in New York, people will stick to the right.
hmm
Whereas if you walk down the street in Sydney, people will stick to the left, right? And so when you go to an international airport, somewhere like Hong Kong or wherever it may be, and you have a lot of people
oh,
that
okay.
drive on different sides of the
hmm
road, it's fucking chaos,
Yeah.
right? Which is a really good example of how that can play out in real time, and where you see those two people meet. There's two types of people who.
Yes.
So
Oh, I think it's even worse than that because even in New York sidewalk, there's a fair amount of chaos.
that's true. You've got a lot of people here.
Just because,
Yeah.
and it doesn't have to be, because we don't have the common knowledge, even in America, stay on the right side of the sidewalk. There's no
Mm.
law, there's no line in the middle. And so, even though it would make sense if everyone did it, people don't all do it because they can't expect everyone else to do it.
Yep. Well, you have
In,
tourists and business travelers and people from out of town
well,
that aren't going to
you may
follow.
have a
Yeah.
certain amount
Yeah.
Australians and
Yeah.
Britons and Japanese. But I don't think that's the reason. Even if it's all American, it's never been established as a convention. Conventions in general are and norms are held up by common knowledge. You behave a certain way because that's the way you behave. That's the way everyone knows that you behave that way.
Okay. Yes, but this brings me to the point of like, are the conventions necessary to produce outcomes that aren't? I've got no other way to describe this other than this is why we can't have nice things. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yes.
in any complex system, you always have, well, this would work perfectly if everybody played by the rules. But of course, people don't. You can have a brilliant social security system if not for people who took advantage of it, or whatever. You can build in whatever you like.
Yes.
And so it's all about sticking to social conventions in a way and leveraging that common knowledge, right? And so do you find that like maybe these isolated societies whereby common knowledge is more agreed upon and more homogenous, that they would be effectively more successful in why they can have nice things and why
Mhm.
we can't?
Yeah, an interesting question. There's a sense in which we have way more nice things. We have iPhones and stereo headphones and flat screen TVs and antibiotics and vaccines and
Mm,
on and on. Um, and our simpler and ancient societies had none of these.
mm,
And it's partly because we can coordinate on much larger scales by conventions like corporations and governments and universities, the rule of law, which allows people to know what other people expect. And so you can coordinate on much bigger scales, captured in the story of the Tower of Babel, where when people had a common language, and language is the ultimate common knowledge generator, you say something, you know that you said it, they know you've said it. That's how we effectuate most of our coordination. And what the biblical story captures is that with a common language, literally the sky's the limit.
yeah.
And the reason that our species has transformed the planet, paved roads and invented airplanes and harbors and all the rest, is that we work together, coordinating our efforts, dividing the labor via language.
It reminds me of something where whenever I go to a rock concert or something like that, where anywhere that people in the audience are allowed to clap along,
Oh yes.
I notice this very strange artifact, which is that people will be clapping along to the song. And if I look around at anyone in my immediate vicinity, they're all clapping at a time, right? But when I hear 20,000 of them all in unison, they're clapping in time,
hmm
which means to say that, I mean, I'm not good at rationalizing this, but I think it means that the average, or at least the majority of people, are in time to the extent that everybody sounds like they can clap in time
Yeah.
when not all of them can really clap in time.
Right.
Now, do you think that this is kind of like collective rationality in a way, that any individual may not act rationally, but as a collective of humanity, we need to have a collective rationality to move forward.
Yeah, so it's certainly and this is something that I thought of when I wrote my previous book called Rationality, when I had to deal with a paradox that uh, our species has managed to do some incredibly rational things, like get to the moon, invent smartphones, discover DNA, um, date the age of the universe. I mean, just mind-bogglingly
Yeah.
rational things. But if you take an individual person and you study their problem solving in the lab, they've got all of these biases and blind spots and fundamental errors and fallacies. Wikipedia has a entry for cognitive fallacies. There are now 200 of them.
Oh God.
Daniel Kahneman won a Nobel Prize for discovering many of them, together with his late colleague Amos Tversky. So how can a species where each individual seems so cognitively hobbled do these amazing things? And part of the answer is, or the major part of the answer is, we work together in institutions, like science, where we accomplish, uh, we can be collectively more rational than any of us can be individually. And in fact, even studies show of small scale cooperation in reasoning. So if you give people some of the logical puzzles that most people get wrong, but you have people solve them in groups of like three or four, all it takes is for one person to come up with the correct answer, and he can always turn the others around. As soon as it's pointed out to them, they say, "Oh yes, that's it. I was
Yeah.
mistaken."
Things are obvious in retrospect, but
Obvious,
not
they're
right.
obvious.
Yeah.
So that's what institutions capitalize on. Things can be obvious in retrospect. If it was just people getting together and each one squabbling about his favorite solution to the problem, we would get anywhere.
Yeah.
But if we did have the capability to recognize a solution when we saw one, then one genius can then carry the day. Now,
Yeah.
of course, that doesn't always happen. Often the genius dies in obscurity or is shouted down or burned at the stake.
Not recognized until
Not
300 years after their death.
that happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's less likely to happen if you have um, groups that are united by the goal of seeking truth. It can't just be that they exchange ideas, because throw a bunch of crazy ideas together and you get a bunch of crazy ideas. But if it's that, hey, we're in this to try to get to the truth, so let's have free speech so you can voice hypotheses. Let's have open criticism. Just because you're powerful, your idea doesn't necessarily carry the day. Testability. Then the group can kind of gradually bumble its way to the truth. And so scientific norms like peer review, empirical testing, journalistic norms like fact-checking and editing and printing corrections and retractions, judicial norms like an adversarial process. There's a prosecutor, but there's also a defense, and they get equal time. These are all kind of engineered gadgets to get people collectively to be more rational than they are individually. If you just open the floodgates and say, "Oh, everyone's got a say," I think there was an idea, it's naive in retrospect, about 25 years ago. Social media and the internet were just going to lead to much more rationality because the truth will win and all ideas will spread, without friction.
Yeah.
Turned out, we
The
were wrong
opposite.
about that. You really have to have groups of people having guardrails that direct
Yeah.
them to the truth. Even Wikipedia, I mean, it's got lots of errors. Still, it's it's pretty awesome for something that's just put together from the ground up by anyone who wants to have a go at it. But to be a Wikipedia editor, you've got to sign on to their 5 pillars, like sourcing, objectivity, and you've got to be committed to um, rules that tend to move you in the direction of the truth.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting what we value in people, because I see this. I guess I would say one of the things that I value in thinkers is their ability to change their mind on something when presented with different evidence.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
However,
Yep.
you're
go on.
unusual.
Oh, okay. When we elect politicians, they are punished for this action.
Yes.
Which and I've never understood it, although recently I've come to a more charitable understanding that I think that what people want is consistency, as in I don't want to vote for somebody because they think X, Y, Z, but then they change their mind and do the opposite to what I wanted. I mean, they're going to do the opposite to what you want anyway, so who gives a fuck, right? But at the end of the day, there's this disconnect where I think I'm not sure whether it's that we put people on pedestals who we want to elect for government or whatever it is, and we think they should have it all figured out. I don't think it's that.
So I think we're porting. What you've identified is a profound impediment to rationality at all scales, because no one's infallible, no one's omniscient. It's inevitable that some of your opinions are going to be wrong. There's a saying attributed to John Maynard Keynes. It turns out he never said it, but most people didn't say the quotations attributed to them. But according to the story, he was criticized for changing his mind. And he said, "When the facts change, I change my mind. What do you do, sir?" Paul Samuelson was probably the first person to say it.
Right.
But anyway, it's a very good philosophy. The reason that, we talked about super forecasters earlier in the conversation. So one of their virtues, and one of the things they actually cultivate, doesn't come naturally, is not to get married to a hypothesis. Not to make it part of your ego, part of your reputation. When the facts change, you change your mind. As they inevitably will. I think what we do is we port over strategies for bargaining, for conflict, where if you stand your ground, you might force the other guy to give way just so you can come to an agreement that's better from your point of view.
Yeah.
The stubborn person often wins the negotiation, and it can intimidate an adversary. So that is considered a personal virtue if you want to not be exploited, but it makes no sense if your collective goal is finding the truth, where you ought to be able to surrender hypotheses.
Yeah, I think that's what it is, right? So it's a case of, I mean, a lot of those people don't care as much about the truth, but they care about winning arguments.
Exactly.
And when they care about winning arguments, they appear more charismatic to the people who may elect them, and therefore they're more electable if they don't change their minds.
Exactly. And they are, it's quite literally the basis for dominance hierarchies.
Yeah.
The alpha is the one who does stand his ground.
Yes.
Now, if they both, so say in a game of chicken, where you have two drivers racing toward each other, and the first one to swerve loses face because he's the chicken.
Yeah.
Then public stubbornness crucially has to be common knowledge that you're not going to swerve. The other guy has no choice.
Yeah.
The problem is if both adopt that strategy, then it can lead to disaster. But
you lose two alphas at that point. Then who's going to get?
Yes.
Yeah.
And sometimes in the animal kingdom, you seldom get animals of the same species fighting to the death, because the stronger one tends to stand his ground. The weaker one gives way. That's where it gets you pecking orders. But sometimes
in interspecies, you're saying,
in general,
species? Oh, okay, right.
Within species.
Yeah, right.
That is, say, competition among males.
Okay, so two orangutans, yeah. Okay, sorry.
Sometimes you do, because there's no way to tell which one is stronger until you actually have them fight it out.
Yeah.
But often, if one of them looks stronger, if one of them stands his ground, if one of them doesn't give way, the other one will, and they'll be locked into that relationship for the future. That's where pecking orders come from. But it's not ported over to the human situation of trying to determine what's right and what's wrong. It's maladaptive to treat arguments like possessions, like weapons.
Yeah.
They are things that are communal, that we all are trying to evaluate. And one of the reasons that rationality is so hard to come by collectively is that we all tend to treat ideas as advertisements of our own talent, of our own resolve, of our own moral purity, and people get wedded to their hypotheses as part of their identity, and that's a big problem.
There have to, obviously, though, be some benefits to irrationality, right? On an evolutionary level.
Well, there can be the sometimes called a paradoxical tactic. So let's go back to the game of chicken. If you are, let's say you lock your steering wheel and you put a cinder block on the accelerator pedal. So you have no choice. There's no way you can swerve even if you wanted to. you win. So that's kind of a crazy thing to do. Like, what happens if the other guy doesn't swerve? You've sacrificed your ability to save your life. But ironically, sacrificing that makes you likelier to win in the first place. So that might be a reason why we have hotheads and mulish behavior and people who are completely unreasonable. They can kind of get their way in arguments. Now, so what's the danger, of course, as with the chicken, is if both people adopt that strategy. In the case of chicken, they'll die in a flaming crash. In the case of a relationship, there'll be constant bickering all the time. What allows us to get out of that is we can walk away and just refuse to play the game with people who are irrational. And that's the break on everyone being a hothead.
I understand what you mean. So I was initially thinking about it from a slightly different perspective, which is that, let's say, if we're talking about the evolutionary mind, prior to Enlightenment values, if it existed in a tribal context, it may be more beneficial for the evolutionary mind at that point to act irrationally within the context of a tribe. Okay,
in some regards.
For survival instincts, or the best way to cooperate or coordinate is actually to be subservient and irrational. And I think we seem to have taken a lot of those evolutionary traits to our modern, developed, scalable minds. We're not in tribes anymore. We're now on Twitter, with 1 million people, not the 12 people.
An example of that would be what's sometimes called a culture of honor, where you have to reply to any insult or affront or loss of face with a display of belligerent resolve, sometimes retaliation when people challenge each other to duels, or just had burning resentment if they lost face in public. Sometimes many homicides are motivated by stupid things like road rage,
of course,
or arguments over a parking spot or a pool table, which is a case where, again, our evolutionary background may have selected for what are called paradoxical tactics, namely voluntarily, not that you think it through, it's all unconscious, that is, you sacrifice control and rationality to be that much more formidable in an antagonistic confrontation. And so that the problem with being rational is that your enemies can use it against you. So for example, so just some everyday examples. The Brinks truck that carries all the money from the bank to.
Okay, yeah.
So there's a sticker on the door that says, "Driver does not know combination to the safe."
Okay, yeah.
So that's kind of ignorance. On the other hand, it's an ignorance that serves the interests of the driver.
Yes.
Namely, they can't put a gun to his head and say, "Open the safe or we'll blow your brains out."
Yeah.
He can credibly say, I'm ignorant.
Yeah, read the sign.
And the ignorance works to his advantage. Likewise, if you're protesting, construction of an oil refinery, and you lay down on the tracks. Well, the engineer in the locomotive can just keep going, knowing that you'll scramble out of the way. If you handcuff yourself to the tracks, then the locomotive has to stop. And so the lack of control, in a sense, a lack of rationality, because it's a crazy thing to do, but it can work to your advantage in these antagonistic bargaining situations, and which we face. All the time when we're in conflict. Now we do, since the Enlightenment and with the rise of institutions, have less destructive ways of settling disputes than duels and so on. We have, in theory, disinterested rule of law. We have police. We've got courts, and so you file.
Court system is amazing, isn't it?
There are lots of problems with it, but just the
concept. It is amazing. I'm saying the concept of it.
The concept of it is amazing.
The innocent until proven guilty concept.
It is.
In and of itself is just one of the marvels of the modern era.
It is. A friend of mine, the late anthropologist Napoleon Chagnon, who worked with the Yanomamo hunter horticulturalists of the Amazon for 30 years, and they are constantly at war. They raid other villages to abduct women or to avenge a previous abduction. And he once explained the idea of a court of law, and they said, "Wow, that's a great idea. If only we had that."
That's a great. You mentioned AI before,
Yeah.
and I use it quite a lot for various things. And I've been using it for maybe like, I don't know, 2 years now, something like that. And it very quickly became something that I almost couldn't live without.
Oh, uh-huh.
Like even just when I remember I was registering stuff, researching about, visa stuff over here and things like that, and just having this portal through which I could just like pump out a billion questions, and it just becomes this extension of your mind
Mhm.
in such a different way that, I mean, it was almost like, when Google came about. Actually, I'll tell you this funny story. Before smartphones in Australia, we had this phone number that you could call,
Uh-huh.
and you call them, and basically they just Google something. But the way that it was marketed or framed is that you can ask us any question.
Okay.
So you call, and they'd pick up and say like, "Hey, it's Bob," and you'd be like, "What year was the Notre Dame built?" or something like that, and they would Google it and they would tell you
A
about it.
human would,
A
yes.
human, a
Mhm.
really, and this was the service that you paid for.
Oh,
And
mhm.
I remember everybody was crazy about it. They're just like, "Oh, whenever we get into an argument about something, we can just call this number
Mhm.
and get the actual truth." I marvel at how little people do that these days. Like you just did it before
Mhm.
when you were thinking of that
Yes.
H.G. Wells thing, and you're like, "Oh, this is at my fingertips. I can find this out,"
Yes,
right?
it's an extension of our memory, yeah.
Extension of our memory, extension of our knowledge, and most people these days, particularly I find people younger than me, there's an attitude towards information that it's so abundant that it's lost its value.
Mhm. Yeah.
Like,
There's a cartoon, it's, two men in a bar. The caption of the cartoon was, "Life before Google." And one man says, "I wonder who played the captain on Gilligan's Island." And the other one says, "I guess we'll never know."
I
So,
know, that cartoon could exist today.
yes, it could
I
exist
could
today,
see two Gen Zs having the same
and I wonder if that'll
conversation.
happen with generative AI. Uh,
Exactly. So, like, how do you see this? Okay, so Marshall McLuhan, famously, the medium is the message. Uh, what do you see as the message of technology?
yeah. So even though I'm, proud of my fellow Canadians, uh, somewhat skeptical of Marshall McLuhan. I think
Oh,
even though
bring it on.
it's not like Annie Hall where you could bring him out from behind the scene and say, "I have Marshall McLuhan here."
Yeah, that was such a good scene. Yeah.
Yes. Um, well, he was, he didn't, he didn't make a lot of sense in the
Mm,
sense that by design, he did not have step-by-step logical arguments.
that's true.
And although
Yeah, yeah.
the media have effects, but they aren't the message. The message can be conveyed by all kinds of media, and either the Holocaust happened or it didn't, either slavery happened or it didn't, the world's getting warmer or it doesn't, or the Earth goes around the sun, and it doesn't matter what medium you convey that in. The medium is not the message, even though
Mm.
it has effects.
Perhaps it's a message.
Okay. I
Mm.
mean, it has effects.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
it can change society.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think he took it too far, and he was a bit of a kind of postmodernist in that he didn't really acknowledge that there was objective truth.
I didn't know that about him.
Yeah, well, that's when you think about the medium as the message.
Mm,
It's like, well, wait a second. If a message is a proposition can be true or false,
that's
and that
true.
can be true whether it's said aloud or typed or transmitted, as a text or
Mm,
email. Anyway, so it's the fact that he wrote in an age where television was transforming society, and he captured the insight that new communications media have big effects.
global village and et
And
cetera.
the
Yeah, yeah.
global village, I think led people to give him, in my view, too much credit
Mm,
for a statement that is patently false, and for a general style of not really caring about lucidity, logic, coherence. If you read his stuff, it's real kind of free association.
what do you think about, with artificial intelligence going the way that it is, and also concurrently technology, and to an extent, this becoming an extension of ourselves in the way that we
Mhm.
spoke about
Yeah.
in the somewhat connected sense. But there's also, I guess, the potential for that to diverge with us, biologically and technologically.
Mm-hmm.
Neuralink is an example of that, and I'm sure that there'll be plenty of examples in the future. If this were to converge at one point in time, the exponential nature of increase of this information digitally and technologically, what does that mean for our biological brains in the future?
Yeah. So I don't think the biological brains will change that much. Um, and I don't think that we'll merge neurologically with electronics in the sense of brain implants, although they may offer great help to locked-in patients,
Mm,
paraplegics, Parkinsonian patients. But the brain, with 86 billion neurons, 100 trillion connections at the levels of at the scale of thousands of a millimeter, um, a single neuron can have a synapse with 1,000 other neurons. The complexity at that level of the microcircuitry is not something that we're going to understand or decode or reverse engineer, let alone stimulate directly in any coherent way, I think, in any time soon, if
interesting.
ever.
So you don't think we're at risk of being eclipsed by?
Well, I think
Mm.
the computers themselves,
Mm.
as we're experiencing, in fact, as we've experienced since the dawn of the age of computers,
Mm.
outthink us in many ways, starting with just brute calculation and information retrieval.
Sure.
We passed that. Computers exceeded our ability in the 50s to do that. And then with the new advances in artificial intelligence, things like face recognition, speech recognition, um, uh, summarizing documents. There may be many things that they'll increasingly do well, but those are that's all in the silicon and gargantuan amounts of silicon. Uh, the but the idea that there'll be, say, electrodes implanted in our head where we'll be able to just think commands to computers without having to move our fingers or our eyes or our voice, I think is not going to happen anytime soon, if ever. Just because the scale of neural computation is so intricate and microscopic that aside from fairly gross things, like maybe be able to turn on a light, although you could turn it on just as well by saying turn on the lights, and the fact that drilling holes into the skull is not really a great idea if you can avoid it.
Yeah.
Uh, so
I've been asked whether I'd do a thing called osteointegration, which is where they put a prosthetic into your bone.
oh yeah,
And
okay.
even that doesn't appeal to me
Oh, okay.
whatsoever. So forget about drilling
Yeah,
into my
and that's,
skull.
if you can consider how many degrees of freedom there are in a hand, I mean, it's impressive, but it's still, it's in the tens.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's in the, trillions, that's a whole different order of
The risk
magnitude.
factor is huge.
Risk factor and just the fact that we have interfaces to the brain of our voices, our eyes, our hands that are already kind of integrated because they grow. They weren't implanted.
Mm.
But when we were babies, all of those neurons found each other and then fine-tuned with experience. So I'm skeptical that we'll have brain-computer interfaces for everyday life anytime soon, although they will help people with paralysis and
Mm.
quadriplegia and so on.
So a couple of weeks back, I was interviewing this guy who wrote a book in Australia about eradicating death. And
Oh,
it
yeah.
was about the book centers around, it's kind of like cryogenically freezing. I
Mhm.
think it was, I forget what the name of the process was, but it's basically freezing synapses of brain function such that you could be reanimated in the future, hundreds of years down the track. I was reminded at the time of, I don't know if you know that movie Sleeper by Woody
Oh,
Allen,
yes.
where
Yes.
he's like, he wakes up 200 years in the future, and the woman's like, "You mean to say you haven't had sex in 200 years?" And he's like, "204 if you include my marriage." I just one of my
Yes.
favorite
I remember
lines.
when he was told he's been asleep for 200 years, he says, "Oh my god, I was in Freudian psychoanalysis. I'd almost be cured by now."
Yes, it's such an underrated Woody
Yeah.
Allen movie. I love it. But it made me think a lot about whether I would be frozen
Mhm.
and wake up in the future to be reanimated such that they could cure anything that I might have had, any ailment, Would you live forever if you could do it?
And not continuously deteriorate.
Yes.
Uh,
In perfect health.
well, yeah, okay, yeah. Forever's a long time, but
How long?
but see, there's the rub. If I say 120 years, well, on my 120th birthday, I might change my
Of
mind,
course.
and
Yeah,
that
yeah,
could
yeah.
be at any birthday. So, and also a lot would depend on whether the world was going to vanish in a
Yeah.
nuclear holocaust or some other catastrophe,
Which you can't control.
which you
But
can't
but but
control.
you could stipulate at least upon the
Yeah, I think that.
vitrifixation of your brain, only wake me up once you've cured this blood cancer that I died of or whatever.
Yeah, right. Yes. So, not that I think that this is going to happen,
Hmm.
but yeah, I would sign on to that.
Okay. So we have you on record for saying that. So if anything happens in the next 10 years, I'm gonna,
Yes.
I've got a couple of quickfire questions for you. You don't have to answer quickfire, but okay. 3 fundamental principles for a meaningful life. If you had to pick them, what would they be?
That's been done. Rabbi Hillel in the first century. If I
Was he on
am,
YouTube?
he has a channel. If you
It's
like it, subscribe. Leave a comment.
yeah.
If I am not for myself, who will be for me? If I am only for myself, what am I? And if not now, when? That's what I have chiseled on the
That's
stone.
better than anything I could ever write. That's fantastic. You just had that one up your sleeve. Fantastic. What's an experience that you had in life that was worth every cent?
Oh, let's see. There's some wonders of nature: Great Barrier Reef, Aurora Borealis, Galapagos, that are up there. There are experiences that you can't buy in the sense that they're unique confluences of events that'll never be exactly repeated. A walk on the beach with Rebecca at sunset, and this perfect sunset. Of course, money does help. There's a joke. I learned this from Rebecca of a very, very rich man who buys this spectacular country house with a view, but then there's a bunch of trees blocking the view. So he buys the next property, cuts down the trees. He then adds a couple of stories to get an even better view. And he's sitting there with his wife, looking at the sunset. He says, there's some things that money just can't buy. I once told that joke to an Australian billionaire. He didn't laugh.
Oh, you met an Australian billionaire. There's like 3 of them. Who are you doing?
Maybe I shouldn't say on the record.
Yeah, maybe not.
And I was at his spectacular house with an ocean view.
Oh, that's nice. Okay, actually, speaking of billionaires, that was going to be one of my next quickfire questions. If I gave you $1 billion and you're not allowed to fucking give it to charity, okay? So I don't want
Okay.
any answers like that. Just $1 billion and you've got to spend it on yourself or, your family or whatever. What would you do with $1 billion?
$1 billion. Okay, I'm not allowed to give it away.
No.
I think a nice apartment in New York, maybe in Greenwich Village. And I'd have some left over, a little bit left over.
I'm not sure that you would. Maybe in a couple of years.
And I think that and a kind of an assistant who knew me well enough to offload a lot of chores.
You're a cheap date.
Yes,
You kidding
right.
me? That's
$1 billion. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. So what would I do with $1 billion?
It's the kind of money where you can
true.
stop. I don't know if you're a sports fan, you could buy baseball teams or something like that. I don't know. I'm not that way inclined, but some people are.
Yeah, let's see. No, I wouldn't want to.
You could probably buy a country if you wanted to.
Yeah, a small one.
Yeah.
But right, set up a university.
Yeah,
I don't think I would do that.
There's a good one for you. Set up a university.
We got plenty of universities, but although we could use some challengers.
I'm sure you could. Yeah.
I
can start an airline. That's the best way to lose money.
That's right. It could go in no time.
Yeah.
Yeah. My desires have kind of they kind of plateau at a certain point, and I'm kind of close to there. There aren't a whole lot of things that I want that I don't already have.
What are the things that make you happy these days?
Oh, just having completed a book or an essay that I'm proud of. Not necessarily the process of writing it, but but having completed it.
Yeah.
That gives me satisfaction. I didn't have children of my own, but Rebecca has two grown daughters, each of whom has a son, and the experience of being a grandfather and having some of the experience of parenthood, although any parent would say it's not the same, but having experience of watching kids grow up.
Mm,
That's something that's um, the 4-year-old just comes into our bed in the morning just to frolic, just for fun.
yeah.
Hey, my other grandson is taken on the beach, and he's just fascinated finding seashells and crab claws.
Is there a
And this goes back, by the way, this goes back to the problem of taking things for granted. Because
mm,
I mean, I'm not saying anything that any parent doesn't already know, but through a child's eyes, you do learn appreciation for things that you took for granted. A pebble, a feather. A feather is pretty amazing, and a 4-year-old can be fascinated by a feather. We're not, but we should be.
yeah. I was saying this to Laurie Santos recently. I get the same kind of wisdom from my dog,
Uh huh.
who, when I walk,
Oh
take him
yeah,
out on a walk, literally stops to smell the roses
that's right. We don't,
when I'm
and
just
it smells a
stressed.
lot of things that aren't roses
Yeah,
too.
that's right. Yeah, I think she said something similar. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, what is a lesson that you that had you learned to at a younger age would have changed your life for the better? Do you think?
Oh, a couple of things. One very simple one is when you're young and in college, take more math. Because there are lots of things you can learn when you're old, not just because your brain is,
Oh, this is
but
such
no,
good
but also
advice.
because when you're
Yeah,
in taking a course, you got to do the damn problem sets,
yeah,
and you understand things at a much deeper level when you're forced to do the homework than when you just read about it and your eyes just skim, down the page. So that would be one. I think another, not to be um, so upset about being wrong. I think I defended ideas when I was younger. I couldn't imagine what it was like to surrender them. And I would want to, yeah, to win arguments. Not that I was belligerent, in person, but in print, I would defend things and probably not adhere to optimal standards of rationality that I now recognize today. Uh, c Conceding your own fallibility, defending, setting up a opposing position in the strongest possible form, uh, uh, acknowledging limitations in your own ideas. I think I could go back and probably do better. And not getting as emotionally invested, thinking that if someone shows that I'm wrong, it'll be the end of the world.
yeah.
It'll ruin my reputation forever. I'll have to just hide under a rock. Uh, I think I could have been less anxious than I was younger.
It's really common for people to answer that question with a form of be less self conscious about something,
Interesting.
which I
Yes,
think is
it's true that when there is a general. Earlier, I talked about a long list of cognitive fallacies, but one of them is thinking that other people are thinking about you all the time, where they really
yeah.
aren't.
If you really knew how little they were thinking
Yes,
about you,
you'd be a
you would
lot more
live a
relaxed.
complete. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yes.
If you could, well, if you had to, let's say, relive a year of your life from the past, but I'm going to frame this in a, but you'll understand this. Some people don't. You're not allowed to change anything.
Hmm.
You're living the year again
Yeah.
as though it's playing out a movie, but your first person narrative. You can choose any year of your life. What would it be?
So, I when I think about all the things that can go wrong in someone's life, all the disasters that can happen, all the misfortunes, and the odds are stacked against you. There are so many more ways for things to go wrong than to go right. I look at my situation, and I'm pretty comfortable, and I've a lot of things that could go wrong with for me haven't. I'm in a job that I like. I'm in a marriage that I like. I've got recognition. There are things that I'm proud of. So I can think of, I can think of grievances, things that I don't like about the situation that I'm in. But when I realize how improbable it is that I could be as lucky as I have been, I wouldn't change anything, just because I don't know what the ramifications would be if I had done something different. I may have avoided one bad thing, but I may have, who knows, invited a dozen bad things that I couldn't have thought of at the time. I can't even think of now. What I do know is, having survived all of the obstacles of life and gotten to where I am, in good health and good fortune and so on, I got to think I wouldn't change anything, because I'd be just playing with fire. I- I'd be taunting the gods of fortune, even with all the things that I could complain about now or my past periods of life. Still, you got to be grateful for good fortune. Is my and so I wouldn't change anything. Which doesn't mean that I necessarily made the right decision. Um, Obviously, I like everyone, I've made a bunch of blunders. But adding it all up, if I made it to this age, alive and healthy and comfortable, then I should not look back and change anything.
It actually segues really nicely into the last thing I wanted to talk to you about, which was uh, the idea of free will,
Mhm.
which I'm guessing we're in the same camp, that we both believe it doesn't exist. Is that? I don't want to jump the gun, but
Depends what you mean by free will.
okay, all right,
But if it means defying the laws of the universe, the laws of physics, that there is, as someone once put it, every time you make a decision, a miracle happens in your brain. So I don't believe that. Uh,
sure, okay,
I do believe in a different concept that you could call free will,
right,
um, and namely that there are unfathomably complex processes in the brain. Um, some of them non-decidable or non deterministic, in the sense that either purely random effects, or nonlinear dynamics that mean that noise gets amplified and sends you in different pathways, or just things that no one else has enough information to guess beforehand. Those We have circuits in the brain that do that, mainly in the prefrontal cortex. They're not reflexes. They're not predictable.
mm,
Um, they're sensitive to a vast array of information, from memory, current circumstances, anticipated consequences, which means that what people informally discuss as free will, namely, uh, you can't write a simple algorithm that predicts them, is true, even though there's no woo-woo, no magic, no defying the laws of physics. That it's all molecules in the brain.
yes.
Okay, that's maybe too long an answer.
Oh no, it was really short. What are you talking about?
Okay.
Um, I think I'm on the same page as you there, with that added layer of uncertainty that obviously I'm not absolutely sure that it's a completely deterministic viewpoint, but molecularly, yes, I agree. But I think
Let
that,
me throw in one more
yeah,
idea.
sure, yeah,
So remember, earlier in our conversation, we talked about paradoxical tactics, and how if you're sometimes if you're unpredictable, you have an advantage. An example would be an outguessing standoff. So in soccer, actually in hockey, I'm Canadian.
okay,
I'll use a more familiar example.
sure.
Penalty shot. The shooter can shoot left, shoot right. The goalie can defend left, defend right,
They can't
or
defend middle,
or
or is
defend
it?
middle.
Oh,
Yeah,
they
or
can.
defend
Okay,
middle.
right,
Sure,
yeah.
sure. But
Because there's a minimax. There was a study about in minimax decision making about how people 80% of the time go left or right, but they never say
go in
stay
the middle.
central. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, yes. So in any case, um, if you have any predictability, if the goalie has any predictability or any tell that gives away what they're going to do, the shooter exploits it,
Mm,
and vice versa. So the optimal strategy is that there's an irreducible element of randomness in it. Or in the game of scissors, the optimal strategy is to be random with a certain probability.
okay, yeah, that makes
Likewise, in
sense.
scissors,
Yeah,
paper, rock, what's the strategy for winning? Be completely random. One third,
yes.
one third, one third. any deviation from randomness, the other guy can capitalize on it. So because we're always in this game theoretic dilemma that sometimes if we're too predictable, we can be hacked.
Mm.
So it's even possible that the brain has built into it a certain amount of randomness so that we're not too predictable and therefore not hackable. Now, randomness isn't the same as free will,
No.
but it's related in the sense that
But if you
would
believed in free will, you could believe that you're imposing that randomness upon, I
perhaps,
guess. Yeah.
yes.
Well, I was thinking about it through the lens more of, I mean, I don't believe that I have free will. Nonetheless, I operate as though I do because I think you must.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's no other way to live.
Yeah.
So in a sense, you're kind of pretending.
Someone said, we have to believe in free will. We have no choice.
Yes. It was either Voltaire or Hitchens or something like
Uh-huh.
that. But yes, effectively, like you need to act as though you have it, whether you believe you have it or not. And then I was having this conversation with Peter Boghossian recently, who said that he's pretty certain almost nobody believes what they believe based in evidence.
Mm-hmm.
Based on evidence. They believe what they believe based on what their community believes, in groups, out groups, how they want to identify, availability bias, all of those cognitive biases that you listed. And so it's been leading me to think recently, like, if free will is pretending, if beliefs are kind of formed just by the people around us, to what extent is our life just a complete performance?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think it's a complete performance because first of all, I think it's an exaggeration when it comes to physical stuff in front of us. The fact there's a beer bottle there, it's not a social
No, it's not a
contagion.
social
I really do
construct. I
see
get
it,
it.
and it really is there.
Yeah.
uh,
No, I don't
and it
mean it
comes
in
to,
that way. Not a
yeah,
social constructionism. That's not how I
and
mean it.
it'll so and I think if there are to the extent that our institutions of objectivity,
Mm.
science, journalism, law, work as designed, and granted, as human institutions, they often don't, but probably better than if they didn't exist in the first place. Then you do have a view you can have a view of reality that is accurate. You don't just believe what you want to believe. If I um, b- believed what I wanted to believe, a lot of my beliefs would be very different because there's a lot of ugly stuff out there that I wish weren't true, but I have to accept is true.
Mm.
Uh, so I think it could be exaggerated. There certainly is no question that there are self-serving biases. We believe what our tribe rewards us for believing, what makes us feel good, but it's limited by reality. That is, you don't. At some point, reality pushes back that's because reality is real, and so there is pressure, selection pressure, both evolutionary and social, not to get too out of touch with reality.
How do you think we can create an intrinsic motivation for people to think on a collective level while acting individualistically?
Yeah. So, well, the reason we value freedom is that people are the best judges of their own interests. By and large, there are some exceptions, addicts and cases in which we overvalue our present self compared to our future self. But but in general, giving people freedom should be the default unless it infringes on the freedom of someone else. Um, but there are cases, and this is where game theory has enormous insights for everyday life, where if everyone acts on their interests, they end up worse off than if they are constrained. Uh, the classic example is the tragedy of the commons, where each shepherd has an incentive to let his sheep graze on the town commons. When
Mm.
everyone does it, they graze the commons bare. The grass doesn't grow back. They're all worse off. They'd be better off if there was some kind of price on grazing your sheep or restriction. Hockey players, everyone is more comfortable if they don't wear a helmet. They also don't want to get brain damage if they fall on the ice. But if the other team doesn't wear helmets, if the other players competing for records don't wear helmets, they're um, they have an advantage because their vision is unimpaired. On the other hand, everyone has a disadvantage if they're more likely to get brain damage. So in a competitive situation, you're really better off with helmet laws that force you to do something that individually you wouldn't do. So you really are better off if everyone wears helmets, even though if it was up to you, you would do something that would do you harm in the long run. So many examples like that. And that's why another reason why I'm not an anarchist. That is, there are some laws that constrain my freedom ultimately for my benefit because they constrain everyone else's freedom too.
So if you were to leave me with one parting word of wisdom after this dinner of how I could lead a better life, being more rational and serving the collective good better, what would it be?
There is a truth. You don't know it, and neither do I. But we can try to approach it.
Stephen Pinker, cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you for being on Last Meal.
Thank you for sharing my last meal.
Yeah.
Preparing my last meal.
Yes, preparing and sharing.
Yeah.
Yeah. We can finish off these drinks now and maybe have a little bit more of the noodles.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll grab some.
I think I will. Can I serve you some more?
Yeah.
What did you say these are called?
These are called nokedli.
Nokedli. Okay.
Yeah. I always leave a conversation with Stephen optimistic about the world and our place in it. It's often difficult to swim against the current and see the world for what it is, what we have and how lucky we are. But I do believe we're all the better for doing so. And that's all from me.